American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
And I'm going kind of fast, but as you know, you're welcome to pause this video at any point. Let's talk about Valley Forge. One of the more depressive parts of Revolutionary War. Valley Forge. Okay, Valley Forge. Washington and his men set up camp at Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. Really cold winter, and the Congress had no money to help the troops out, to give them food, to give them clothing. It's hard to survive in the cold winter without food and clothing. That winter, 2,500 men died from frostbite, disease, and starvation. So that's 2,500 men that died in a war that had nothing to do with the war. They died because of their lack of the ability to stay warm and stay fed. Only the force of his personality, his being George Washington, and his reminding them on what they were fighting for, kept the Continental Army from completely falling apart. Many of these men were done. They had served enough time they could leave if they wanted to. But Washington was able to keep them motivated and keep them fighting. So even after suffering 2,500 casualties, from frostbite and starvation. As we said, Washington was able to convince, and they were free men. They could have left. That's the thing. So Washington was an amazing general who had the loyalty of his men and the love of his men. To keep fighting. Part of the reason why they made him president afterwards, after the war. We'll skip this one too. Like I said, you guys can go to the prison and check it out if you want to. Battle of Yorktown. Okay, this is the last battle in the war for independence. Okay, so we're just about done now. Battle of Yorktown. Okay, this is when the French finally showed up and were able to help us. So the French seriously helped the Americans, and the troops were now well fed and well armed. So where we just talked about not having food, not having weapons, now we're ready. Then the French caught word. They found out that Cornwallis, who was a notorious British general who defeated many American troops, was in Yorktown. He was the main general there for the British. He was in Yorktown, and it was a peninsula, meaning body of land surrounded by water on three sides. Okay, so and they had enough men. It could be possible to block off his troops and supplies. So they only had to block off land on one side and the water on three, so they could limit their escape. Finally, the trap snapped shut. Washington had twice the number of men that what Cornwallis had. So Washington, for once in his career, actually has more men than the enemy. The British ships tried to save their troops, but their efforts were in vain since French warships drove them off. So they couldn't get help from land because Washington had them cut off. They couldn't get help by sea because the French had them cut off. So finally, British soldiers surrendered to the French and the Americans. So this is Washington and the French. Let's see. Cut off Cornwallis and British surrender. It's a big moment there. And interesting that Cornwallis, he didn't even surrender himself. He had one of his minions do it for him. So showed a lot of pride. Skipping this one too. Treaty of Paris. Okay, we talked about a Treaty of Paris as well. The end of the revolution. I mean, the French Indian War. We know a treaty is just something where they work it out peacefully. So let's talk a little bit about this, and then we'll be done with this lesson. So, Treaty of Paris. Battle of Yorktown forced the British to surrender. And Paris, which is why it's called Treaty of Paris, here we see Benjamin Franklin again, and John Jay met with the British representative. They demanded that their independence be granted. All British troops get out of America. France and Spain didn't want America to get too strong, so they tried to limit the territory that Britain gave to the U.S. Okay, so they wanted us free of Britain because they didn't like Britain, but they didn't want us too strong because they probably still wanted our land. They were probably scared that we would attack them. So the Americans held a secret meeting with Britain and worked out an agreement. The U.S. western boundary would end with the Mississippi River, and the Treaty of Paris was signed on September 3rd, 1783. And that was the official end of the war. So, let's see. Franklin and John Jay deal with England. Okay, and signed on September 3rd, 1783, ending war and becoming United States of America. Okay. So that's our big moment there. Finally free. We're not going to do this, but so the next part we're going to talk about is what did they do after the war? Well, they had to establish a government, and that wasn't as easy as they might have thought it was going to be. A lot of hurdles in getting a government that everyone could agree on. All right, so take a minute, see if you got get all those notes. Like I said, you can pause, you can fast forward, you can rewind, you can rewatch, you can do whatever you need to do. Have these notes down.
Proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. But I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land.